This is the sound of beautiful music.
You run time of the day with KODA.
Here's the right time.
It's 10 o'clock in Houston.
KODA. Here's the KODA weather report.
Here's the outlook for the entire KODA listening area. Clear to partly cloudy and a little warmer through Friday, with moderate south and southeasterly winds prevailing. The high today near 78 degrees. Low tonight about 54, and the high Friday will be near 82 degrees. Current temperature reading officially in the city is 70 degrees. The relative humidity is 55%.
That's all you all.
KODA's Town Forum on Sunday is a thought-provoking hour of discussion with news-making people that will give you a broader knowledge of the people that make the news. Newsworthy problems of the times are discussed and thoroughly probed by special guests. Hear KODA's Town Forum with moderator Joe Crawford, Sundays, 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. on the new look KODA.
Once again, from atop the world, high over Houston and the KODA Bird, here's Ted.
Looking at traffic on the Gulf Freeway, where, as we said a while ago, the traffic has moderated somewhat and is about evenly spaced between inbound and outbound. And the inbound traffic certainly isn't having any trouble whatsoever. No slow or stop conditions on the freeway at the present time. And although the freeway will usually remain active all through the day, it's going along in very good shape right now. In the 1600 block of Cullen, where that auto and train got together a while ago, that train is still on the crossing there. And it is affecting traffic on Cullen. You won't be able to get across for the next few minutes until the train is moved. But that should be just momentarily. Things are going along good in the Palm Center area, and traffic moving without any unusual delay. You might be cautious in the 6400 block of the Katy Freeway. Just had another minor report out there. 6400 Katy. Use caution. This is the KODA Bird.
Barry Goldwater speaks tonight at 8:30 on Channel 13. Hear Goldwater's address to the World Affairs Council tonight at 8:30 on KTRK-TV. The preceding announcement was paid for by the Republican Party of Harris County, Charles Hayden, chairman.
Well, sir, I believe if you go anywhere in KODA country, you're going to find the traffic working along in pretty good shape most everywhere. A while ago, we reported the accident at Ardmore and South Park. Make that Ardmore and South McGregor. I'm sorry about that mistake. That's South McGregor instead of South Park. South McGregor at Ardmore, so do use caution in that intersection. And a light morning as far as accidents are concerned, and that's always good news. Well, if you're going to travel today, as Don said, we suggest an airplane, but that's just a personal preference, perhaps. If you are going to go anywhere, of course, it's a good way to go. It sure is quick, I'll tell you that. We get around the town pretty well in the KODA Bird, but that's nothing compared to some of the things they got in the air these days.
It's all right, I'll stick to buses.
You will, huh?
All right.
Well, I'd like a double-decker myself. At least I'll be up in the world somewhat. Huh?
I wonder if we'll ever get a double-decker.
We gotta get a double-decker.
Gotta get a double-decker to go to the Dome Stadium next year.
Right.
My
My goodness, we need that double-decker pretty bad.
Come on, Bernie.
Let's go, buddy. Hey.
Hey,
Old Bill has been celebrating Columbus Day all morning by singing.
what in the world is he singing to celebrate Columbus Day?
Well, he discovers a note and then lands on it.
Ha, ha, ha.
Not good.
Very good.
Not good, but loud.
No, it's very good. Clever. Very clever.
Well, that's how it goes in the old KODA Bird. You know, you got to put up with something. All right, my boy, we'll be back this afternoon at 4:30.
No, sir.
You won't be there.
No, sir, you won't be here.
We won't?
No, you'll be here 4:15.
Say, that's right. My
Yes, sir.
George, I'm glad you reminded me.
Starting today.
My goodness, I hadn't really forgot, really. But we will be here at 4:15. That's true.
Sure will.
Okay, but you won't.
No.
You're going to be resting right back on your dew claws.
They let me out of the cage.
I see. Well, Mr. Pennington will be on hand, most likely.
I hope so.
Well, we'll see you then.
Okay.
Goodbye, everybody.
Have yourself a good day.
Thank you, Donald. Same to you.
Goodbye, Captain Marvel, wherever you are. And if you're shopping downtown today, gals, may we suggest that you shop downtown the Dreamliner way?
Enjoy Dreamliner's ride with us.
final KODA Bird traffic report of the Monday morning has been presented by Rapid Transit Lines, Bernie's Bookies. 59 degrees right now in KODA country. We'll take a more complete check of the weather right after the news. News time from KODA, 8:55.
This is Art Van Horn, ABC New York, with the latest news and comment from ABC Radio. In the top of the news, sunrise around the world, and the High Court decides. In a moment, the details. And the news, this late word. The U.S. Supreme Court has refused to change its stand on reapportionment in state legislatures where membership would be based on population. The Supreme Court, in other words, lets stand its previous ruling on reapportionment. Every hour and a half, sunrise circles the Earth. Sunrise, Voskhod, that's the name of the Russians' three-man space vehicle launched this morning. It's a big leap forward in the race to the moon. The Soviet crew, made up of a pilot, doctor, and a scientist, have the mission of studying stresses of spaceflight. There's speculation that later they may try docking maneuvers with another red space capsule. The Kremlin is triumphantly keeping the Russian man in the street informed, as we hear in this report from Radio Moscow.
Early this afternoon, the Moscow television service gave millions of people a chance to see the three men who have been orbiting the Earth since morning. The images had been recorded on videotape. The aircraft engineer, doctor, and researcher feel fine. Their spirits are high.
That from Radio Moscow. And this much at least is clear. The Russians are in the moon race to stay. They undoubtedly have a mighty new space rocket. And American observers feel that the Soviet Union now leads the United States by anywhere from 2 to 6 years. Our first three-man capsule is at least 2 years from even reaching the launch pad. Still there at the War Memorial in Ottawa at the moment, along with Prince Philip, meetings and talking with dozens of Canadian war veterans.
Hello, here's a message from your telephone company.
A word to the wise is DDD. Direct distance dialing means smart economy. The cost is less than person-to-person calls, and it's quicker naturally. And above all, it's your own personal call when you dial DDD.
I'm Jenny Pace for Southwestern Bell with a word about direct distance dialing. And in one word, it's the best in long-distance telephone service. Gives you a sense of nearness as miles melt away. Isn't there someone somewhere who would like to hear your voice tonight? Rates are low, service is fast.
And above all, it's your own personal call when you dial DDD.
That was our theme song, friends.
Good morning. This is Phil Howard from the trading room of Rauscher Pierce & Company, member of the New York Stock Exchange. Prices of stocks on the New York Exchange were virtually unchanged, as the industrial average posted a 1-hour gain of up 0.71. Rails also were up 0.12, and utilities were up 0.03. Brokers across the nation expect a little hesitancy in the market for the short term, as the Russians might have an opportunity to fight ahead of the USA in the space race.
The Soviet spaceship Sunrise has landed safely. KNUZ, Radio Authority News.
Brought to you by the Texas Electronics Association and the Bottlers of Light.
2 Houston men die in helicopter explosion in northeast quadrant of the city.
KXYZ, Total Information News. The 10 o'clock report brought to you by Sam White Oldsmobile, 2520 Main and McGowan, Houston's oldest Oldsmobile dealership. Now with the news, here is Richard Foljam.
A helicopter crashed and burned this morning in northeast Houston, killing its 2 occupants. Dead are KODA radio station announcer Ted Carr and the pilot of the ill-fated craft, Bill Holmes. The plane was used by KODA to broadcast traffic tie-ups. The crash and resultant explosion occurred some 100 yards behind the Standard Rendering Plant near the intersection of Porter Street and Shawker Drive, just off Jensen. KXYZ News talked with an eyewitness to the tragedy, T.H. Sides of Standard Rendering, who told us he heard a popping sound, looked up, and saw the yellow whirlybird crash into a group of trees. This was the way he put it.
I was out there working on the truck, and I looked up at it, and I heard I was looking at it, and it exploded, looked like in the air. You know, one piece went one way, and then the other one, it just fell.
Approximately how high was it in the air when you saw it?
It's hard to say. I guess it was 250, something like that in the air. 150, 200 feet in the air, I guess, something like that, maybe 250. It's hard to judge, you know, standing right down on the ground. It's hard to judge anything like that.
Now, you say the helicopter was between 200 and 300 feet. Is this about the same altitude that it is every morning that you've seen it pass over?
Yes, or something like that. He was at, just on the level there whenever he was going over, and directly, I looked up at it, and there's some pieces going one way and some pieces going the other, and I mean, it just come right straight down. And I went on down there and hit a bunch of trees after it landed, and it caught on fire. It could have been on fire before it fell. I don't know. It was smoking.
Mr. Sides, there has been a report that there was a popping sound which preceded the explosion. Did you hear any popping sound?
Yes, sir, I sure did.
What kind of a popping sound would you say that was, since you are a mechanic?
It just sounded like things just tearing all the pieces in there. And just boom, just like that.
And thus the eyewitness account of an early morning tragedy that takes the lives of 2 Houstonians.
AM has arrived at the end of its broadcast day, but will resume tomorrow morning at 6:30. KODA is owned and operated by the Taft Broadcasting Company of Houston. We are licensed to operate on a frequency of 1010 kilocycles with a power of 1,000 watts from sunrise to sunset. Portions of our programming are mechanically reproduced. So until tomorrow morning at 6:30, this is Mel Pennington speaking for the entire staff of KODA, bidding you a very pleasant good evening.
This is KODA FM in Houston. In memory of 2 of our associates who lost their lives today, stations KODA and KODA FM have suspended all regular programming for the remainder of the day. Our deepest sympathies are extended to the families of Ted Carr and Bill Holmes. The management of KODA has been asked to act as custodian for a memorial fund for Ted Carr and Bill Holmes. In memory of these 2 men, we will do so and see to it that gifts received are properly distributed to the bereaved families. Gifts may be sent to Memorial Fund, KODA, Houston, 27, Texas.
This is Don the Block, and we're here this morning to serve as your KODA companion. We continue because we must.
Listen carefully to what this man has to say. His message requires just 28 seconds of your time. If you're expecting a politician, you'll be disappointed. This is a small businessman who's concerned about the future, your future and his. Listen.
This is Des Barry speaking. I want to be your strong, clear voice in Washington. What I believe in, I fight for. I don't make deals. I am not a professional politician. If you think conservative, then vote conservative. Elect Des Barry to Congress on November 3rd.
Des Barry will make a great congressman. The man who beat Hoppa. A dynamic voice, not an echo. Send Des Barry to Congress.
Paid for by the Des Barry for Congress Committee, Jim Bailey, Chairman.
Brighter and better than ever before. This is the new look, KODA.
K-O-D-A, Space City, USA.
All right, 11 minutes before 5, right here on KODA, KODA. 6 minutes away from Genio Gene Arnold and all the business news in review.
America's great statesman, Senator Strom Thurmond of South Carolina, left the Democrat Party to throw all of his support behind Senator Barry Goldwater. Senator Thurmond, how does Barry Goldwater stand on Social Security?
He favors Social Security. He wants to protect this fund to be sure the money will be there for our senior citizens when they are ready to retire. He does not favor loading down the system with various extraneous programs, such as Medicare. In France, the Social Security system has been in danger now. We noticed in the last 2 weeks because they loaded down with Medicare. He wants to make our system strong and protected for our senior citizens. And I think that's a sound position because we want to be sure the money will be there to pay off our people when it comes time for them to retire. Therefore, Senator Goldwater is going to take every step he can to protect the Social Security fund because he is strongly for Social Security.
Vote for Barry Goldwater. In your heart, you know he's right.
This announcement was bought and paid for by the Harris County Republican Party. Barry Goldwater for president. Charles Hayden, chairman.
And you heard it on KODA 1010 in Houston.
People listen to people who know. Get you know local and world news. KODA keeps you in the know. KODA News. The wonderful world of sports. Scores and on the scene reports. KODA.
All right, I'll buy that. And
Tonight, Barry Goldwater will make his only scheduled personal campaign appearance in Houston. This will be the Senator's major Texas rally. Colt Stadium, tonight at 7:30 p.m.
Bring the entire family to this mammoth rally. Concessions will be open. Clint Walker, star of television Cheyenne, will be on hand to give the gentleman from the West a true Western welcome, Houston style. There is, of course, no admission charge. Free to one and all.
Come lend your weight to the surging swing to Goldwater. Voice a vote of confidence for the candidate who puts principle above politics.
Come see Barry Goldwater in person tonight at Colt Stadium, 7:30. In the event of rain, the rally will be held in South Houston Coliseum.
The preceding was a paid political announcement paid for by the Republican Party of Harris County, Charles Hayden, chairman.
And special South Main 8400 buses will be available at Maine and Texas to provide transportation to and from Colt Stadium beginning at 6 this evening.
5:25.
People listen to people who know. Senator Goldwater arrives in Houston. Khrushchev departs the Kremlin. Good evening. This is Dave McQueen with the 525 edition of Kodascope News. Senator Barry Goldwater arrived in Houston just a few minutes ago. Here's a report from Gene Arnold.
A smiling and tanned Senator Barry Goldwater rode through the streets of downtown Houston today, meeting much applause and great enthusiasm from the throng that gathered on the side. We saw the senator as he came up Pease, turned on to Texas Avenue, and then made another turn back down Main Street. The senator seemed to be in very good health. He had an extremely warm tan, and he was looking up and waving to the crowd. Most of the people had just gotten off work and were very happy to see Senator Goldwater. The motorcade was moving briskly through downtown Houston, did not pause a moment, and the motorcade was perhaps going at something like 15 to 20 miles per hour, not giving people too much of a chance to say hello to the senator. Sitting next to Senator Goldwater was Mayor Louis Welch. He also was smiling, but doing all the waving today was the GOP presidential nominee. He now has moved over to the Shamrock Hilton, where he's holding a staff conference, and of course later tonight he will deliver his statewide telecast beginning at 8:30 from Colt Stadium. That telecast will be blacked out here in Houston. Gene Arnold for KODA News in downtown Houston.
Republican officials estimate more than 20,000 people will turn out tonight in Colt Stadium for the Goldwater rally. The 10-year era of Nikita Khrushchev has ended in the Soviet Union with an official announcement that he's been released from his jobs as premier and Communist Party secretary. The TASS announcement said Khrushchev requested retirement because of failing health and his age. He's 70. He's also leaving the Communist Party Presidium.
The top jobs Khrushchev held are being divided among two lieutenants he has long trusted. Leonid Brezhnev is taking the key post of Communist Party secretary. Alexei Kosygin is becoming premier. The TASS announcement said Khrushchev's release, that was the word TASS used, was granted this week. The average Soviet citizen figured something was in the wind when Khrushchev failed to follow his normal custom of telephoning returning cosmonauts to congratulate them. This week's orbiting of 3 men was a spectacular Soviet space achievement. Khrushchev remained silent after the landing. Red China's official news agency has reported without comment the retirement of Khrushchev. Khrushchev has been the major target of the Chinese communists who've described him as the greatest splitter of the international communist movement. 4 Soviet heroes of World War II have expressed the opinion in New York that Russia's peaceful coexistence policy will be continued despite the resignation of Premier Khrushchev. The New York stock market was jolted severely by first unofficial word from Russia that Khrushchev was out. The reports brought the sharpest break in stock prices since President Kennedy was assassinated last November 22nd. After nosediving around midday, the market recovered much of its loss by the close.
Go! 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 Go!
He will keep our nation strong and out of war. Goldwater. He will cut the waste and craft and then what's more. Goldwater. He will throw the rascals out and slam the door. Goldwater.
In your heart you know he's right.
So go Goldwater. Let's go Goldwater. Let's go Goldwater all the way. Just make a note to cast your vote for Mr. USA.
It's 76 degrees in KODA country, partly cloudy and a mile through tomorrow with a low tonight of 62 degrees, and Tuesday's high will be about 83. Okay, so now we've heard the Republican campaign song, Go, 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 Water, and now for the next 2 minutes we're going to play the Democratic side of the story, and here's Ed Ames and the male chorus from the Broadway show Hello, Dolly. Here's Hello, Lyndon!
Hello, Lyndon. Well, hello, Lyndon. It's just great to have you there where you belong. You're looking swell, Lyndon. We can tell. Lyndon, you're still glowing, you're still growing, you're still going strong. We hear the band playing and the folks saying, you're the man who knows just how to get things done. So, wow, oh, wow, fellas, look at that guy go now, fellas. The whole darn world agrees that he's the one.
gentlemen, Mr. Walter Brennan.
You know, we're hearing a lot of talk nowadays about the danger of war. Well, I'm concerned about the danger of war. Now, I've been around long enough to remember all the wars we've had since the turn of the century. Now, here's something to think about. The Republican leaders didn't start none of them. Every war we've been in was begun when the Democrats was in office. And what's more, every Democrat president since 1900 has had a war. Now, you just look at the record, and you'll see that appeasement and fear and disarmament have taken place before every war. You'll also find that Barry Goldwater won't allow none of these dangerous policies.
In your heart, you know he's right. A political announcement paid for by the Conservative Action Committee for Goldwater, Tex Hale, Chairman.
The KODA News Time is 5:25.
People listen to people who know. Johnson in Houston stocks up. Good evening, this is Joe Coffer with a 5:25 edition of KODAScope News for Texas National Bank of Commerce. President Johnson arrives in Houston. Gene Arnold reports.
The President of the United States, Lyndon B. Johnson, has just arrived here at the Music Hall before a tremendous reception, before a crowd numbering more than, we would estimate, more than 2,000 or 3,000. It's hard to really estimate because the crowd is lined up from one end of the street to the other, and they're all in a very gay and festive mood. President Johnson has just gone briefly into the Music Hall. He'll be coming out in just a moment to give the speech to this highly partisan crowd. As we noted in one of our earlier reports, there are only one or two Goldwater people that are here. They had a sign a while ago. That sign has now disappeared, but those two supporters are still here. But they are far outnumbered by the many Johnson people that are here. Immediately noticeable with the president arriving was his aide Jack Belletti, who is from Houston, and his press secretary George Reedy. The crowd is all waiting now for the speech from President Johnson, which will be coming up momentarily. And as we said before, a very happy and gay crowd as the sign denotes here at the Music Hall, "Welcome home, Lyndon and Lady Bird," and the crowd heartily agrees. Gene Arnold for KODA News at the Music Hall.
excitingly different, vibrantly alive. This is the sound of beautiful music.
Stop pushing. All right. KODA has arrived at the end of its broadcast day, but will resume tomorrow morning at 6:30. We now invite you to tune your FM radio dial to 99.1 and our sister station, KODA FM. KODA is owned and operated by the Taft Broadcasting Company of Houston, Texas. We are licensed to operate on a frequency of 1010 kilocycles with a power of 1,000 watts from sunrise to sunset. Portions of our programming are mechanically reproduced. Figures. So until tomorrow morning at 6:30, this is Mel Pennington speaking for the entire staff of KODA, bidding you a very pleasant good evening. All right, friends, it's that time now that we can talk politics. Cut the music, please. As you know, voting day is November 3rd for the election around the country, and it's only a week away. So you be thinking about voting. Now let's take these charges, both Republican and Democratic, one by one. First of all, my personal opinion about
Good morning. You're with KODA FM, Houston. Now from KODA FM, a look at Houston's weather forecast. Partly cloudy and mild through Thursday. Moderate mostly east and southeasterly winds. The high expected today, 82 degrees. A low of 65 predicted for tonight. And that's KODA FM weather for a Wednesday. Now join us for more KODA FM music in stereo.
What have we got to be thankful for this month of November? A land that's free with the right to vote, and we keep it free each time we vote. What have we got to be thankful for? It's great to be living as KODA reminds you. This month of November, we've got a lot to be thankful for on this Thanksgiving.
These are the voices of two American presidents, both speaking about a senator from Texas. October 19th, 1963. John F. Kennedy.
Ralph Yarborough speaks for Texas in the United States Senate. And he also speaks for our nation. And he speaks for progress for our people.
August 29th, 1964. Lyndon B. Johnson.
And I don't think Texas has had a senator that voted for the people more than Senator Yarborough's voted for.
Vote for responsible leadership in the tradition of John F. Kennedy and Lyndon B. Johnson. Vote against extremism. Vote to re-elect Texas senior Democratic Senator Ralph Yarborough.
The preceding announcement was paid for by the Democratic Campaign Committee, Bill Kilgarlin, chairman.
Good evening, Americans. This is Paul Harvey with comment for K-Site. You know, for the past 16 years, I've always written my post-election newspaper column in advance of the election and sent it to publishers 5 days in advance with instructions to print it on the day after election, right or wrong. Fortunately, it's always been right. But today, for those who might not otherwise see it in print, just for fun and just to crow a bit, may I read now this year's column. After first a word with you on page 2. If your car has started to burn oil and the exhaust smoking and the oil level down every time you refill with gas, you ought to be ashamed of yourself, you know, because the car has been neglected. With proper K-site lubrication, no car need get in that condition. But if yours has, because of neglect or old age, if your exhaust is smoking and your engine pumping oil, will you listen to the happiest news you've heard since the self-starter, K-site Motor Honey? Where there are worn parts in your car's engine, K-site Motor Honey, it's a thick, slick, honey-colored super lubricant, gets in there and fills up the worn spaces. It takes up the slack. And not only is friction and wear then reduced to a minimum, but the pistons stop slapping and the exhaust stops smoking and the rattle trap is shushed, so you'll hardly recognize the purr and the power. K-site Motor Honey, and it costs only $1.30. And any good service station has it or can get it. And if your exhaust does not stop smoking, double your money back. That's right, we're that sure what K-site Motor Honey will do in your car. Now here's the column which was written and delivered to publishers 5 days ago. It's entitled Johnson Wins. Quote, Goldwater forces were not prepared for what happened in San Francisco. With minimal organization, negligible coordination, and much intramural opposition from within the GOP, they got a bigger turnout yesterday than they earned. These advance columns are not written as a stunt so much as to show that Americans are consistent and predictable. President Johnson will not be so anxious about the readily explainable conservative tide in Dixie as about the undercurrent of opposition which he encountered where he least expected it. In New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, California, the president had been led to expect much more lopsided victories. The consensus of the pollsters was that Johnson would win, and that much of this column required no uncanny foresight. But what caused the Goldwater groundswell of grassroots enthusiasm which reached such a crescendo at San Francisco to fizzle out? Several factors contributed. First, as I say, the Goldwater forces, surprised by the nomination, were caught unprepared. With half a dozen hastily recruited speech writers shoving sometimes contradictory material in front of Goldwater, his conservative image was blurred. His unimaginative choice of a vice presidential candidate was unfortunate. Miller has a voting record which is fairly consistent with Goldwater's, but he was not known and he simply did not project. He did not come through. The Republicans' clincher with many fence straddlers could have been Humphrey might become president. But that threat lost its sting when the electorate was reminded Miller might become president. Americans, let's face it, President Johnson made himself an elusive target. Sometimes during the campaign it appeared that Senator Goldwater was pulling his punches when actually he was throwing punches which appeared to miss the mark. And also, frankly, it's doubtful that the Republicans, whatever their organization and preparation, could have succeeded this year. The moratorium on Negro rioting squelched that issue. The Russians behaved themselves. Inflation remained momentarily in check. The deliverable block of 8 million welfare votes stacked the deck in the incumbent's favor. It did not help any that some petulant or reluctant Republicans declined to help Goldwater, though that could have been made an asset. This election might have given Americans a clear-cut choice between two political philosophies. It became instead a choice between two personalities, and from it has emerged a man with more political moxie than any man since FDR. Indeed, if he can continue to appear everything to everybody, or a president of all the people, as his supporters say it, Mr. Johnson will eclipse FDR in political ambidexterity. Those are the words written and delivered to newspaper publishers 5 days ago. The loyal opposition is defeated, but it's not dead. For K-site, Paul Harvey. Good night.
You're listening to KODA Houston.
Astros. Astros. Astros.
voice of the Tribune is the voice of the people. Since ancient days, the Tribune has been the champion of the people, speaking out to protect their rights and interests. And here is Clymer Wright, publisher of the Houston Tribune.
It's hard to decide what is the most alarming: the ability of the newspapers and magazines to preset the thinking of the public, or the ability of the public to be persuaded to think according to the printed page. Americans have been victims of the printed page for nearly 2 centuries. Of course it's true. I saw it in the newspaper, someone will tell you. You'll believe what you read as fact because it's printed. Newspapers never lie, never suppress the facts. Well, they do, the best of them. Newspapers stopped printing the facts about 100 years ago. Ask any educated newspaper man about the age of yellow journalism, when Joseph Pulitzer, James Bennett, and later William Randolph Hearst built fortunes in newspaper dynasties on sensationalism, distortion of facts, and bad taste. That's when true reporting died, and the facts were buried alive, when emotionalism and money became editors of this country's newspapers. Nowadays, if it sells newspapers, it's news. If it doesn't, then forget it. But there's a twist to this statement. It's funny but true. In our modern world, there are men who sell news to be used in the newspapers. They're called advertising and public relations people. They are specialists in the field of public opinion, and they have their place in our society, between the facts and the newspaper page. Now, I have a friend who's an advertising and public relations man. He's a good one, and he's honest. When he approaches a new client, he takes along a copy of the daily paper, from which he has cut out all the manufactured news. When he shows his client what's left, the real news, there's scarcely enough to hold the front page together. Today's newspapers are weapons, tools that shape the mind. That's why it's important for every one of us to gather facts for ourselves. We must learn to recognize true news and facts from opinion and untruth. Remember that your newspaper contains many stories dreamed up out of the whole cloth, released to the newspaper after careful writing and editing, and checked by the people involved. All of it designed to create the proper image in your mind. For instance, rarely if ever has the President of the United States issued a statement through his press secretary which put him in a bad light. Rarely, if ever, has a movie star issued a story about his loose morals, bad judgment, or lack of talent. Rather, the opposite is true. What you read is suppressed fact, and innuendo touched with skimpy information. My desk is loaded every day with news stories, photographs, feature articles, all called news, but really blue sky stuff created out of nothing. I throw most of it away and laugh over the rest. Well, Will Rogers was right when he said, all I know is what I read in the newspapers. But old Will Rogers didn't add that he read all kinds of newspapers on all kinds of subjects. That's how he learned facts. You have to do it too. Keep your opinion, your political party, your own faith, but open your mind to truth and honesty. Read those newspapers that don't agree with you. They may be telling the truth. It's your opinion and your mind, so use it.
What is the Houston Tribune? It's Houston's great new newspaper, offering you the fresh kind of news you can't get elsewhere in Houston. You'll find inside information from Washington, the kind of stories the wire services won't touch. From Sarah McClendon, the Tribune's special Washington correspondent. And, of course, you'll get local news, things you miss in the dailies, your own local news, the kind of local news that you don't find anywhere else. It's in the Tribune, Houston's great new newspaper. To subscribe, call the Tribune, M06 1535. The voice of the Tribune. A fresh, strong, new voice speaking out to protect the rights and the interest of the people. For another penetrating comment on the news, the unmanaged news, listen daily to Clymer Wright, the voice of the Tribune. And if you know something the voice of the Tribune should know, call the Houston Tribune, M06 1535.